This is WPSL Port St. Lucie.
The following is a paid program. The content is provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership are not responsible for the content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. And now, the host of the TEAM MARTEK Hour, Joe Martek.
Joe Martek, and it's me, Joe
It's
Martek,
you.
very same one. And today, we temporarily have Dan Woron, who just got called
He's in
out.
the hall.
But, you know, that happens, you know. Hey,
Yep.
Alan Love should be done cruising. We haven't heard back from
No,
him.
I think he's still cruising. He said March. He'll be back in March.
Okay, well, that's next
Yeah.
week.
Yeah, so he's still having fun.
By the way, I won't be here next week.
You won't be here next week. Where are you going?
Mexico.
Really?
Yeah. Build a wall. No, what happens?
I thought people were trying to get out of Mexico.
No, well, you see, what happens is my son, for years, has been going down to this little town called Jalapa, which don't ask me how to spell that for sure, which is south of Puerto Vallarta, which don't tell me how to spell that.
And then
one.
that's a tourist destination.
And Puerto Vallarta is big time. It's on the Pacific Ocean, mountains, right, stuff. Well, this little town of Jalapa, the only way you can get there is by horse, and not buggy, by horse or donkey, or by boat, because the roads are all washed out going to this town, and the Mexicans are big at repairing their roads, so it's on the agenda for 2097. Anyway, so he's been going there forever, and it's like this all-by-itself world that you can't get to from here. And you get there by boat, and there's no real ferry services. They're commercial fishermen and stuff pick you up and take you. So, anyway, he's there. So I'm going down for a week and do a little fishing, I imagine, climbing steps. They got a waterfall right in the middle of town, coming off the mountains. It's supposed to be a very, very neat spot. Everybody I hear.
It sounds like it. Yeah.
Well, so and this way.
Yeah, it'll be a neat spot until it gets discovered by too many tourists.
Well, that's the problem with everything. But on
Hopefully they won't ever fix the roads.
Well, on the other hand, this is not what you call a garden spot with hotels and stuff, because you can't get there from here. You know, it's a because there are no roads. Hey, some big American developer comes in and builds a road, and all of a sudden hotels and
What's
stuff.
the bug situation in a place like that?
Not much. You know, I've been to Costa Rica on the Pacific coast, and the bug situation was almost non-existent because everything was open air.
Right.
The only problem is you got monkeys walking in a house if you don't have
monkeys
screens.
would be a problem for me.
And the lizards.
Jamaica, when I went to Jamaica, everything was like open air too, and there were like no bugs.
Yeah, I don't know why, but maybe it's because they got a lot of lizards and geckos that eat the bugs.
Yeah, or they never got there. You know, they never.
Well, they have.
Because it's an island and it's out in the middle of the
I don't think so. I don't think so.
No?
No. Because I've been to islands before.
That
and there's
yeah,
bugs.
yeah.
Hey, mosquitoes, no-see-ums, they don't care. And you know what happens? Bugs are like rats or like vermin. They hitchhike.
Sure.
So if a boat ever shows up there, there's stuff on that boat, and they're transporters. 340-1590. What'd you do? You
I have it on mute, but it still rang.
That's okay.
You have it on off, but it still ring. Did you get a new phone?
Yeah, but I don't know how to use it.
Well, of course not. You know, just about the time you figure it out, it'll break and they'll discontinue.
Yeah, you'll need a
have
new
to
one.
get another one that you can't figure out. 340-1590, 340-1590. Back in 2004, Dan Woron, independent insurance agent, Joe Martek, financial advisor, Greg Fasula, attorney, started doing radio shows with the very simple concept that each one had a different area of expertise and we could answer questions for people. And we said, well, let's do these for a while.
Like a public service show.
Yeah, and Dan said, okay, a while, Joe. And Greg says, how long's a while?
No definitive answer.
You haven't figured out the answer to that one yet.
But I go, poor Greg, if we just said, Greg, we're going to be doing these shows for 15 years, he'd just say, no way, I'm coming.
If he said they're going to be politically motivated
Oh,
when we
boy.
talk.
Poor Greg, I'll tell you. It's we haven't, you weren't here last week, so I didn't get to speak a whole lot
Well, I had
about
to take
this.
my buddy Gary to get his back operated on.
Ooh.
What happened to his back?
He got old,
Well, I understand that.
and they had to get some bone spurs or something
Oh, so
removed. So they had him medicated where
did
he
they do
couldn't
the
drive.
little tiny incision in him?
Yeah, that's what he said. But there's no tiny incision when it's on you or me
Or in your back.
or on your back.
Yeah.
No,
so-
they do all these commercials show, like 1 inch or less, that little tiny incision they make, and you walk out smiling.
He didn't walk out smiling.
So then, over a period of time, because situations demanded it, we added Ms. Victoria Lloyd, Remax of Stewart. When all of a sudden words like short sales and deedbacks and foreclosures became a monster subject during the Great Recession, which led us to Mike Paulus, mortgage broker. And Mike has been such a great addition because back then the word was there's no mortgage money available, which was never true. What happened is it went back to the old rules, which were you had to prove you could make the payment.
And as a taxpayer, because as you know, Joe, we normally get stuck with any debacle in that industry. We end up having to bail them out. I don't have a problem with the lender saying, hey, I don't mind lending you the money. You just got to show me where you're going to be able to pay me back.
Real simple.
That seems pretty logical.
And now in defense of some people, when the recession hit, a lot of people were put out of work, or those sometimes were downsized like crazy. Not everybody did okay during.
So you have to also remember the banks were going, okay, the house is collateral and the prices are only going up.
Well, that's
what they thought.
And if we take it back, we're going to make money.
Are you using logic again?
And look what happened. Well, greed got in there and they lost it.
Well, that very same thing happened in 74, 75.
Absolutely.
Very same thing. Now, each one of these circumstances are a hair different, but the reality was the same. Back then, the banks built thousands and thousands of unsold condominiums all over at least the state of Florida, but really all over America. And I remember one time standing with one of the bank officers from Continental of Illinois, and we were standing next to this big building on the Gulf of Mexico with no units sold, and I said, well, it'll never happen again that you bankers make that mistake. And he said, don't count on it.
Just not the exact same
Not the
mistake, but
exact-
it'll be a different mistake.
He said, all the guys that made these bad loans have either been, I love this part, promoted or fired. Now,
Usually promoted.
yeah, because technically it wasn't really their fault, because when the banks have too much money, in order to make a profit, they've got to put it out on the street. They cannot sit on it. They've got to make it go to work. So they did, and thousands and thousands and thousands of unsold.
So they fund bad loans.
Well, that's exactly what. And then remember the S&L crisis.
Oh, I do, brother.
The S&L crisis was even better because they would loan 110% of the money necessary. So a guy could go borrow $1.1 million and walk away from the loan with $100,000 in his pocket and never make a payment. That was brilliant.
Well, I mean, listen, I understand that the government is trying to encourage and stimulate home ownership.
Right.
And I think that's a great thing, home ownership. But it's not the right thing for everyone.
No.
But every time you try to make something happen, instead of letting things happen naturally, you create a problem.
Well,
Many times.
many times is it. You can't say every time because, in fact, it was a big thing on the radio today. There's always the government grilling somebody, and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac came up, which are quasi-government agencies, but are private corporations that have shareholders. But if they get in trouble, the government bails them out.
Well, if you go way back in time to the Smith theory, remember the theory of the invisible hand, which was the best government is the least government, and if the government stays out, then the people will find its natural balance by itself. And I'm a firm believer in that.
And you notice how well that's worked.
Well, listen,
The theory works
the
perfectly.
theory works perfectly.
But see, there are some in government who believe that they should call all the
they
shots.
know
like
everything.
they should tell you that you shouldn't have any more kids. That's
Listen,
the new thing this week with
when we
our
get,
little
when we get a
shiny
ticket
new
with
thing.
Ocasio and Pocahontas on there, or maybe Bernie and Ocasio.
Pistachio?
pistachio. Yeah, that's She has too many names, too many to remember.
I mean, I was talking to
I heard she was a great bartender.
I'm telling you what, she'd be an entertaining bartender, wouldn't she?
yeah.
Especially if you started arguing politics.
Absolutely. That's probably how she got her start.
You know, and what I would...
She'd probably be better at making drinks than
You
arguing
know
politics.
what's interesting? When you argue with a bartender, and they're on the other side of the political spectrum than you are, but
You need to find a new
You
bar.
find a new bar.
yeah. But they're also afraid to argue with you too much because they know you're not going to tip them.
Yeah.
So they have to placate.
Listen, I have no problem discussing politics with someone who has a different opinion than I do.
Right.
But it has to be done in a respectful way. And you know what? If they can show me things that I'm not aware of, I have no problem with adapting my position on certain things.
Oh, Dan, you got a problem. You're not a liberal.
Well, I'm probably what you'd call a realist. If it makes sense and it's reality, I could probably go for that.
You know, it's only Wednesday, and so far she's had two really good ones. The one where she said, "I'm the boss,"
Yeah.
and the other one where she says people shouldn't have any more kids.
Yeah,
I don't really think
I
you
have a
should have any
problem
more
with
kids.
that.
We should rethink that,
Well,
having kids.
I know
Well,
what
when I was in high school, they pushed what was called zero population
Yeah,
growth,
right,
which
right.
meant a man and a woman who should have two children
Right.
to take their place when they die.
You want to stop? Have people stop having kids?
Well, we
stop
are-
funding them.
Well, there you go.
Well, it
the
would cut
womb
down
was
the
not
population.
supposed to be a factory for money. It never was designed to be that way.
340-1593.
That choke you up, Joe?
I'm all choked up. What do you mean, no factory money? 340-1590, 340-1590. So, Dan,
Yes.
what's new in the insurance industry?
What's new? Well, I mean, as you recall, probably somewhat in your mind, last year I said, hey, I think that things are going to start ticking up because of all the damage that was done on a worldwide scale.
Sure.
All the reinsurance that is now having to be purchased new for this year. And I'm starting to see that. And I would imagine if I'm starting to see it, listeners are starting to see it on their policies too. And one of the good things for our office is we have a lot of carriers that perhaps don't take as big an increase. They're all taking some the way I see it. So, you know, if you're listening and you get your rate on your renewal that's like not really what you expected, you know,
Give 'em a call.
don't wait until the day before.
Yeah.
Because it takes a little time to do the right job. And you know, one of the things that a lot of people don't realize that many of the carriers that we use have a advance quote discount. Does that sound crazy? If you give us a call, let's say 2 weeks before it's due, and we quote it 2 weeks early, they give you a better rate.
So if you do it one day?
One day you get nothing. But if you do it 2 weeks out, they give you a better rate.
Well, underwriters have a chance to really do what they call real underwriting rather than...
Well, here's what I suspect. I suspect that the actuarials, the one who set the rate, probably are saying responsible people who fit into this criteria, who don't wait till the last second, tend to be better risks.
Sure.
And I guess to a degree that makes some sense.
But they should also realize that people are waiting to the last minute because they're scraping the money together.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
I argue both sides.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to tell the people out there, hey, listen, if you're thinking about shopping, don't wait till the last minute. Not saying you can't get it last minute, but it'll be a little more expensive.
You might get a better deal.
But if you shop early, you probably get a better deal.
Well, that doesn't mean you're paying necessarily early, but let's just say your policy runs out 1 month from now, and you call Dan's office, and they say, okay, fine, we got a quote, and it'll take effective on your renewal date.
I can bind it 30 days out.
Yeah. So it's called, you don't have to necessarily part with the money the day you get the quote. You know, every company's a little different, and I can't speak for what Dan's do, but you know what I'm talking about.
Listen, we have carriers that give probably more for the auto side than the home. If you pay it in full, they give you a substantial discount.
Right.
You know, so, and I'm not saying everybody can afford to do that.
Right,
I'm just
right.
saying there are a lot of discounts out there. If you can take advantage of them, consider doing so.
Well, you see, us Mustang drivers can't afford that.
Well, that's the Mustang drivers who speed, Joe.
340-1590, 340-1590. So, I'm going to Mexico next week.
For what?
I love that thing. That's all what I've heard. Every single person has said the same thing. My son has been going for years and years down to this little town called Yalapa, which is south of Puerto Vallarta on the Pacific coast, and the only way you can get there is by boat.
Sounds like a leper colony.
Close. Anyway, what happens is the roads are washed out, and the Mexicans aren't big at repairing roads, so you can get there by horse or donkey, no buggy, because it's really washed out, or by boat. So
You're going to go by boat,
I go by
assume.
boat. What happens is there is no crime, period. I mean, this little village
Because
is
no
like
one
a
can get
country.
there.
No one can get away.
You can't get
You
there.
can't get there.
And it's right on mountains. I mean, the only way to get there from across the country is drop off of a mountain.
Is there anything we're stealing there, Joe?
There's the other problem. If you steal it, how are you going to get it out? That's another problem.
So my original question was,
Why are
for
you
what? What are you
going?
doing going there?
Because my son loves it and it's beautiful.
Well, you're going to be a good dad. You're going to go with your son and hang out with him.
I'm going to hang out with my
Good for
son.
you.
You know.
On this little Mexican island.
on
It's
his,
not an
on
island.
his
It's-
donkey.
Oh, it's not an island.
It's on the mainland. It's in on the Pacific coast in Mexico.
What
but
are you going to do there, Joe?
fish?
Oh, there you go. I could handle that. That'd be nice.
I mean, the bottom line is the Pacific coast fishing. It's rooster fish, marlin, sailfish. I mean, they got fish. It's not
like it is over here
It's
anymore.
not like over here. It's really fishing. There, it's catching.
Yes, I understand
Big
the concept.
difference.
Good beaches or not really? More of a fishing place than a
It's
beachy thing?
more. Let me just tell you, from what I can see, and you can't always trust your son. Your
I'll
kids.
Google Earth it.
Google Earth at Yelapa. It's very pretty. Waterfall right in the middle of town, and it's not a super touristy place because nobody
You can't
can
get
there.
there.
Now, if you started today, Joe, in your boat,
Right.
you could get there in like 2 weeks.
You think 2 weeks I could get there that
Hot
fast?
and
I don't-
slow.
I was going to say, would that be a really
I'd have
expensive
to go
trip,
through
though,
the
wouldn't it?
Panama Canal
You'd have to pay. You could go around. That'd take you a month.
all the way
Oh,
around.
that's really
But
a
it
trip.
cost me $8,000 in fuel to save $200 in airfare.
There you go.
Oh, what a deal!
But you'd have your boat with you.
You could troll all the way.
Then, as soon as the Mexicans find out I have the boat, they probably
They
take
would
the boat.
confiscate it.
Yeah,
It would change the crime rate, right?
I'm telling you, immediately, right? They say, "Hey, we got a new ferry."
Hey,
right.
like your boat.
Mr. Joe, we take the boat.
So the concept of the show, very simply, was everybody's here to save you money except Joe Martek. I'm here to make you money. So, and it's worked exceptionally well over the years, and we have answered many questions for many, many people. In fact, I had a couple of people this last week call me because I talked a little bit about REITs, R-E-I-T.
The real estate trust?
Yep. And real estate investment trusts have to pay out 90% of their profits every 3 months. So the ones that I follow are paying out 10 to 12% annual interest, and they pay every 3 months. But one of the things that happens with these, Dan, it's a roller coaster. These things are extremely volatile in price, meaning the price might be $10 a share now, but just before it pays, it could be $12 a share.
Because they know it's going to pay.
Because they know it's going to pay. Well, guess what? If you can make 20%, why would you want to make 3%?
Of course.
So I had a client in December, not that I say this is going to happen, that actually made 31% in 1 quarter.
Wow.
We really hit numbers. The crystal ball came together perfectly because I wasn't paying that much attention.
That's what was the good thing.
Well, you put in a bottom and you say, this is where we're going to buy. Well, the day I put in the bottom to buy, it went down even more.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, I double hit. Now, only for a short time. It was like for an hour or two, and we got in at an extremely good price. And then, all of a sudden, it went up more than it had normally. So he picked up a 30% spread. Now, right now, this morning, I was with a client of mine. It was 16 and 18% on 2 of them that we're selling today. Same scenario. Now, this doesn't happen every quarter.
Now, how far in the future do you have to own it to get paid the dividend?
Sometimes 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
See, this is like being Catholic, don't ask questions, you just are one. The way these rules are, let's say it pays April 1st. You have to own it March 15th in order to get paid April 1st.
And I would assume that if I called you up and said, hey, I might be interested in this, you'd have some of those dates that might be coming up?
Some of them. I got all of them.
You got all of them.
But the key thing is this. Like right now, I told my client today, I said, okay, we're going to sell them, but I'm not going to buy probably until April. We got to wait for the dip to come down again. And I said, I can't sit and guarantee anything. But, boy, these things, and they're liquid, by the way.
And this dividend check is just, here's
you
it's
give
income?
You lose that. See, if you buy it and sell it before the dividend, you lose the 3%. But if you make 10 or 15
You
during
give up
that
the
same
3, it's
quarter,
okay.
what do you care about 3?
Okay.
So now, if it doesn't happen, and it has not happened on occasion, more than once, you make your 3. So at the end of the year, if everything goes wrong, you make 10 to 12, and if everything goes right, you make 20 or 30. I mean, it's quite the thing. So it's now become a source for all of my money and for quite a few of my clients. And what happens, Dan, with the Don? When did that?
That's
happen?
my
Yeah,
evil
That's
twin.
your evil. The power of stops and limits, I can put it into the computer now, and I don't have to be a genius and watch it every minute myself.
Well, you know, a lot of the bigger houses always had technicals.
Exactly.
All right. So with the technology we have today, it doesn't cost $1 million to have a system
Yeah.
to set that up. So you can do that.
Well, that was why I was listening to CNBC the other day, and they were showing a flashback in time. They called it Rick's Meltdown Day when he was jumping up and down, and there was like 50 guys on the floor behind him. Now there's one. He said, computer technology, all of a sudden they don't need
that
these
many
people standing around because everything is now done
It's done
automatic.
instantly.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's not a bad thing.
No.
You know, there are things within the system that, have sort of like bothered me over the years. Like, at the end, you don't trade a mutual fund till the end of the day.
Right.
So, it's hard to get your amount that you think you're going to get when you make the order. It doesn't actually go through then.
Yeah.
Now the things you're talking about go through at the time. Instantly.
Yeah.
So I like that.
Well, and where Dan was leading, a lot of people don't know this, even though we take it for granted. Mutual fund means it's a company that buys stock in, let's say, 100 companies. And then I come along, or you do, and say, hey, I want $10,000 worth of that whole pie of 100 companies, and they slice off a little tiny piece, and you now own fractionally all of those 100 companies.
So your portfolio is technically diversified.
Very diversified, and you could be as many as 500 companies or even more. Some of them trade the entire NASDAQ or the entire New York
Who
stock.
decides what companies are going to be in there?
You do. Now, you meaning you're talking to somebody who's supposed to know what they're talking about,
Okay.
or you know what you're talking about.
I don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, let's make it easy. S&P 500, have you heard of that?
Yes.
That's 500 of America's biggest companies.
Okay.
Well, you can buy a fund that is...
So companies move in and out of this depending on their performance.
Well, the answer is yes and no. The companies that come and go are based on the S&P 500 board of directors, where let's just say General Electric was a big firm implant. Well, now all of a sudden they're in trouble. They may not be this big firm implant. So they trade one company for another. The amount of effect it has is minuscule. You can hardly tell. But the S&P 500 fund, if it's in a mutual fund, is like Dan says, you call up your broker at 10 o'clock in the morning and say, hey, buy me of the S&P 500. He says, sure. And at 4 o'clock today, whatever that published rate is, that's the price you get.
Or if you have said sold it, that once again is the price you get.
You can't do anything until 4 o'clock. Now, if you call your broker and say, don't give me a mutual fund, but give me an exchange-traded fund, ETF, S&P 500, at 10 o'clock in the morning, he buys it right now for the value it is at 10 o'clock in the morning, or you can sell it for the same price. So the difference between the two, they look exactly alike standing side by side, but the little nuances, which is, this can be a big one.
It can be a big one.
In one day, it can go up or down 2, 3, 4, 5%, and sometimes even more in a crash. So people that have the ability to trade instantly
They have an advantage.
and that's just that simple. So the REITs that I use are always publicly traded, and I say always. If a person comes to me and says, Joe, I want something that's not traded, that's paying me an interest rate, that's not liquid, that I might have to hold on to for 5 or 7.
Find a buyer.
I can say, I can do that, but you're going to sign a piece of paper that said, I didn't talk you into this. It was your own idea because it's not liquid.
And, we do that on the insurance side. If somebody comes in and says, my house is paid for, it's built like a bank, nothing's ever going to happen to it, I don't want any wind coverage, all I want is fire and lightning and liability. There's a nice little form you'll sign that says, I recommended against that, but at the end of the day, it's your money.
But what is the difference in the cost of something like that? Is it a huge difference?
To exclude wind?
Yes.
It can be a substantial savings, maybe 40, 50%, depending on how close you are to the coast. All right. Now, some clients who have mortgages can never do that.
Right.
Because the lender will never allow
Right,
that.
because they want their...
They want to be protected.
The thing that and literally, there are people that have houses that are built like a bomb shelter, and I don't blame them. But
Well, you know what? Even if your house is built like that, you have an old Florida CBS home with a solid pour-tie I-beam and a low hip roof. If the tornado is spun off of that hurricane, and that's what does tremendous damage, is those tornadoes
no matter what.
that spin off the front. So that front's coming in, you got all these tornadoes popping up. I don't care what your house is made out of.
Yeah.
It's going to have some major damage to it if the tornado hits your home. So, it's all a crapshoot. It's all statistics.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
why
a tornado turns your house up north. I mean, you have sticks. The homes look like sticks.
Yeah.
I think statistically, Florida has more tornadoes than any state.
Yes,
but
we
have
do.
small ones.
But they're small. They don't do a lot of damage.
Yeah.
But they find them because, I had a lady I was talking to who works in the actuarial department of the insurance company. She goes, I don't believe we have more storms than we had in the past. She said, but I believe we have technology that finds them.
Yeah.
Before, unless the plane went through it at the right time, we didn't know it was hurricane.
And people are so eager to get them named too. For
yes.
some reason, we want to go through that alphabet so quickly.
And don't kid yourself. There are industries, in my opinion, that like to have storms off the coast to put a little concern into you to go buy their supplies and buy their stuff and watch their weather shows and.
Hey, you watch the
sometimes
news
it creates hysteria.
When a hurricane's coming, they always flash to Home Depot and all the people buying plywood and generators.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big time to go buy that stuff.
Well, I'm not saying don't respect the storm.
No.
I'm just saying don't become hysterical about it.
Well, I'm saying when a storm hits, I've got two choices, or three. One is stay, which you and I've stayed for quite
I
a
stay
few.
for them all.
Well, I have left for a couple. My biggest concern is my boat, sitting in the water.
Well, I mean,
And I have strung it across the canal and done that.
That's what you go see your insurance guy for.
Yeah,
But you can't do it when the storm is offshore.
That's not fair. Can I do? I was listening to this guy on Towboat US anyway, Sea Tow.
Right.
And the guy calls up and says, "Hey, I need a tow." And he says, "Do you have insurance?" He says, "Yeah, I just got it."
Hold on, let me call.
He called in, and they gave him.
Oh, yeah.
I think they may have learned that this is not a smart thing to do.
No.
But
Well, it should have some sort of wait, like 24-hour wait
at
or
least.
something. Well, what happens on the insurance side, Joe, is if a named storm gets within a certain latitude and longitude, now it's what we call it's inside the box.
Right.
And most companies start shutting down for hurricane coverage,
yep.
saying you can't add anything, related to property coverage.
we still
right
call
now.
that the cone of death.
The cone of death. Get Smart called it the cone of silence.
340-1590, 340-1590. And then over the last couple of years, we added a special guest member who's cruising.
Yeah, he's cruising, having a good time. That's
Alan
good.
Love, retired prosecuting
World
attorney.
traveler.
He's a
World
world
traveler.
traveler.
2 cruises in a row, back to back.
Back.
He's going to be
back.
tired when he comes home.
Well,
I bet he'll be a little fatter.
I bet you he'll be fatter. Yeah. Well, as I said to him, I said, Alan, my only experience with cruises is don't get off the boat.
Hey, the last cruise I went on, I lost 5 pounds because I'm not used to walking everywhere.
And you did.
And we walked everywhere, up and down the stairs, and didn't take the elevator. So, yeah, I burned off all the
I think
night.
I need to go on a cruise.
Nancy have a club behind you moving
No,
you?
no. She knows we usually do that. But this last time she hurt her knee, so
You gained 5 pounds.
I walked and she rode the elevator.
Well, all I know is every time you get off a cruise or a boat, you run a gauntlet of shops.
Yeah. Oh,
Here-
yes.
I don't
And they
care.
all look the same with the same.
Well, they're waiting for you to come.
Well, every port you go to in the Caribbean, anyway, it's the same businesses that are on each port.
Yeah, but hey, in Greece they're the same ones, and the Greek Isles are the same ones. I think I told you.
So do you
this.
think that they have anything to do with the cruise company making sure that there's places for their,
Well, the answer
their
is-
cruisers to go?
Listen,
I would
it's
think
it's
so.
it's symbiotic relationship. People get off the cruise line. A lot of people want to shop. When, just because us men don't want to, if we have women with us, they don't like our rules. So they say, "I'll go without you. Just give me the credit card."
Right.
But it's true. So I'm walking down this street in Santorini, an island in Greece.
Yeah, I've been
Mediterranean, and here's the shops, and the owners are. A lot of them are standing out on the street right now trying to drag you in. And I hear this guy go, "Yo, come on in my store." I walk over and I said, "What?" He says, "Come on in, I'll tell you." And I said, "What the devil are you doing here?" Now he's from Jersey. He had to, and I
You
tried
could
to
tell.
do a Jersey
Right.
accent. It didn't work, but he was from Jersey. And I said, "Why are you here?" And he goes, "Well, I tried to get into vet school in America, and I couldn't get in. And I got into vet school here in Greece. And I met my wife, who also was in vet school, and she's a vet. And on Santorini, they only allow one vet.
Guess who that is?
So I'm the housewife with the store.
Yeah.
Hey, it all works.
And it worked. He was not necessarily unhappy or happy. He was just the housewife with the store.
Well, there are different stores when you get away from the Caribbean.
Yeah.
All right. Like when you get into Italy, they have nice little stores that make cameos and all kinds of little more intricate things that are custom made for you. But in the Caribbean, jewelry's the same.
Oh, boy.
Isn't that like the whole thing? Cruise? You go on a cruise, you buy jewelry?
Well, you know what?
Or you bring back liquor from other countries?
I've seen watches on these cruise, stores and stuff that I can get cheaper.
Yeah.
Right here in the good old USA. So know what you're shopping for before you go.
But you see, if you don't know any better, that's what they're looking for. I told you about the greatest salesman in the whole world that I met in Greece.
Tell me again.
Tell you? Do you remember that story?
I do.
So I get off the boat and said, hey, I don't want to run the gauntlet. Can you give me a place to go? I'm going to rent a car and I'll go. And they said, yeah, go to this town. This was the home of El Greco. It's take you about a half an hour to get there by car, and you'll like it. So drive the car. We get there, and it's a scene out of Zorba the Greek. They got a village with a street in the middle, and on the side of it was a creek with pavilions, outdoor pavilions, and this is a Sunday, and everybody in town is out having picnics and barbecues, and people are roaming around playing mandolins and violins. I mean, boy, I swear it was in a movie.
Like the set out of a movie.
I'm right in a movie. So then, because I'm not the brightest bulb on the tree, I walk down this path.
Secluded?
Well, it wasn't secluded at the beginning, but it got secluded when you get to the end. And on the way up the path, there are shops. Now, the shops they have over there are almost 1,000 years old, carved out of a mountain or whatever, but they're shops. So I walk by this shop, and I see this little old lady in the back sitting in the shop, maybe 50 feet from the front door, all dressed in black, the widow costume. And I keep walking. Come back with my wife, and we're on our way back, and she's at the door. And in her hand, she's got a cookie.
It's called bait, Joseph.
In a nice little napkin, very pretty cookie, and she looks at me and goes, for you. For you. And she hands it to me, and here was the death knell. I took it. Then she said, please come in my shop. And she then gave me another something. Cost me $100 to get
out of that shop. Now, see, you should have learned from being in the airports. Remember when all the Hare Krishnas were in the airports?
Oh, yeah.
They would give you a free something, and then they wanted
a flower.
Yes, they wanted money for it. You should have learned.
Well,
something.
the key thing with her.
How could you say no to that old lady?
Well, you see, she probably wasn't old. She's probably in makeup. She probably wasn't even a widow. But I look at
it was a shtick.
The greatest,
She's
greatest salesman.
She's been practicing that for years.
The greatest salesman. I bet you her closing average was 100%. If they walked in that store, they were dead. Because no matter what, you couldn't get out.
Couldn't get out.
And the guy on the boat was probably getting a kickback for sending people to their little town.
No, this is Mexico now. This is different. They always get kickback. Whoever, they refer one to another, and they keep that money moving around. But
I mean, most of the countries that Nancy and I visit, when we're talking to people, they'll tell you a good bit of our money is derived from tourism.
Well, guess what? If you're in the Bahamas, how about Florida? You remember this state, Florida? How much is dependent on tourism?
Tremendous amount.
Listen, if it wasn't for illegal drugs and tourism, we'd be
where would
in
we
deep
be?
Trouble. 340-1590, 340-1590. So, other than that, everything else is normal. I'll be gone for 2 shows.
So will we consider this next week's show?
Well, maybe.
Okay.
If we get somebody to call us, it would help. But,
if not, it's okay.
I think Bulldog's not feeling good.
Well,
but
we all take our turn not feeling good.
Yeah. But anyway, are you going to be on the afternoon show or no?
I've got a 4 o'clock, so I can't.
See, now that means normally he says I'm not sure, but this is an unequivocal.
Oh, I know. I've already got a 4 o'clock.
I'm impressed. They last week I'm on the show, and Pastor Dave, most laid back of the group, his church has a missionary, quote, in Africa, and they have 66 orphan kids that this one couple, been on a missionary for almost 20 years, is taking care of these 66 kids. And they ran out of money. They got to feed these kids, educate them the whole 9 yards. Well, Tom put in $100. I put in $100. So I called Tom just before I got on the show today, and I said, did they raise enough money to put it back together? He says, I'll call you back. And I says, good, because I got Dan here, and I don't know if he's got his checkbook with him or not, but I'm going to get money out of him.
I'm used to that.
I know you are.
I'm a married man.
I know. So all it amounted to was when he started telling me what the story was, I had to.
Now, you know, here's something that's always amazed me. And it's not that I'm a cynic at heart, but I think to myself, how did they do that? So I watch some of these shows, and it tells me I can feed a child 3 meals a day for a nickel or something.
Yeah, I know. Some ridiculous
How did they
Well,
do
that's
that?
not American prices for the food. That's like
well, the key
other
thing,
country prices for the food.
What happens is this, and they were telling me, I said, how in the world can they do this? He goes, hey, Joe, we don't ask how they can do it. We know these people are legitimate. And you know what? You and I are big, I don't know how I phrase this properly. I don't like organized charities because I don't like that they siphon off 10, 20, 80, 90% of the money for overhead. But if I know money is going directly to something, I
And
feel
there's something else that it does, Joe. I believe that when you give directly, personally, I believe you get blessed. You feel good about helping. When you give your money to a third party and that third party does the work that you intend for them to do, you don't get that same feeling with if you do it yourself. You know, help yourself.
Well, yes and yes. And the other side of the coin, I've done it. I know you've done it. I've gone and looked up these individual charities to find out how much of their money.
You'd be shocked how much.
Well, because need is big business.
Yes.
Well, it was at the Clinton Foundation. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, were those numbers off the wall as far as.
Well, you know, we live in a country that truly has an abundance.
Yeah.
All right,
yeah.
and I've been blessed.
Oh, man,
You know, so
big time.
I don't mind giving, and I try real hard not to get a hard heart and not say, oh, well, you're just trying to scam me. I guess I'd rather err on the side of being taken advantage of than never help anyone.
It's one of my more or least favorite sayings, and that is, I'd rather be taken advantage of than take advantage of.
Absolutely.
So, and oftentimes you and I both know this, when a friend says, quote, are you a friend of mine, and it costs you $500 or less,
To find out,
you
no.
got lucky, because you're never going to get it back again, but no money's going to come back.
Well, you know what's a good thing that I found out over the years? If I know someone's lost their job or needs some help, I'll get them to do something for me.
Sure.
Pay them way more than it's worth, and now I never have to worry about him not paying me, or he has to feel like he's ducking me. It's done.
I like it that way, even with my kids. If they need money, what can you do for me?
So it's not, you know,
Well,
of
yeah,
course,
okay.
you
Yeah, the
see,
house
back
needs
when
to
Dan
get
and I were
repainted.
raised, there was no such word as allowance. It was, oh, you want money for doing something. First you have chores you get nothing for.
Well, see,
'cause I'm
in my
feeding
house,
you.
you have chores anyway, whether or not I give you anything.
That's my point. You have chores,
Yeah.
and I'm feeding you,
Yeah.
so this is your price you have to
But
pay.
if they want something, I'll give you an example. Like last year, Landon and Caden, these are two of my grandsons, wanted to give a flower to every girl in their class. Not just their class, but every class in the first grade.
Little players, huh?
Well, they had
These are
different
charmers.
They had different friends and
law of
Let's
average.
give flowers to all
They
the
had
girls.
different
Did you
friends.
teach these kids how to
well,
get lucky?
here's what it was. They had different girls they knew in different classes, and they thought it would be kind of odd to give one to just that girl and not anybody
You know,
else.
this kid
So-
what's his name? Don Giovanni?
Well, so Megan, their mom, said, "Hey, flowers are expensive. If you want to really do this, here's what you got to do to earn the money." And so it all worked out.
did they do it?
You bet they did it.
I would have narrowed it down.
Wow.
Okay, I know 2 girls now.
Well, you know what? They did it again this year.
No kidding.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Wow.
that's really a good thing. That's a good thing. When you see kids,
Wait a second. Let me just ask you this: boys being boys and girls being girls
Absolutely.
school?
Absolutely.
What planet are they on?
It's a private school.
Okay.
see, it's a different world, right?
Oh, where
private
people
school.
still have their sanity.
Well, private schools, parochial schools, they go back to the old rules. You know, that's just the way the system works.
Well, out there in America land
La La
right now,
Land.
I mean, we've got people who are having babies who are keeping the boy or girl off the birth
Well,
certificate.
you know what?
And it's
I hate to
pathetic.
say that, but in my opinion, they're idiots.
They are.
Got it narrowed down.
Hello.
You know, it's a sad state of affairs, a lot of the things that are happening. And the only good news is we got to look at some of this as entertainment value, like our girl Ocasio, or what Pinocchio?
I call her
Pistachio.
pistachio.
I mean,
I've got everybody calling her
the thing-
pistachio.
I'm sure glad I don't live in Long Island City, New York.
Well, here's what would shock me more than anything if she gets reelected.
Oh, man. Can you imagine
All
that?
right, because she just squeaked by.
Well, I hear that they're lining people up to run for her seat already.
Anyone could run for her seat. and win.
Democrats want her out.
Well, no. Hey, listen, she is not going to endear herself to all those people that almost had jobs. Only 25,000
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
And high-paying jobs.
And a high. Can you imagine?
But she is the self-proclaimed boss.
Well,
Yeah, no,
you know,
that's-
she
That's
did.
Bruce.
She
Bruce
did
is the
level
boss.
out the playing field with her staff. She made sure that the bottom people got more and the top people got less. So that everybody, she's a communist.
So
at
she
heart.
got the worst staff of all.
Well, they said, and that was part of it when they were saying that some of these people that are the staffers that are experienced and educated, that these top people, this is quite a very demanding job.
I bet it is.
And he said, when you don't pay them, they're not there. They're going to
No,
go to the
they'll
one to
find
pay
somebody
them.
else.
So she's paying them like $50,000 a year, which most people would consider a decent wage.
Not living there.
Not there.
No, yeah.
But the top people were making $100.50. Now they're not. She's knocking them down. Well, guess what?
They'll be looking.
They'll be looking.
You know, if you have someone who's excellent at their job,
Oh yeah.
and you treat them like they're, well, like let's say mediocrity is how
Yeah.
you pay and how you praise, those people are gone.
Guess what? You ever heard that word, socialism?
Socialism. I tend to block it out of my head because I don't believe in it.
You know, no kidding. Well, it's not worked ever. When you eliminate initiative, hey, I'm going to pay you the same that I'm going to pay me, and you're going to do twice as much work. I personally love that system, and you hate that
And
system.
as soon as I catch on, I'm going to be a rate buster,
But-
and I'm going to say, I'm not doing that anymore.
But they package the whole thing with a pretty bow and tell you about things that you're going to get for free.
There is no free. There is no free.
Wait a minute.
When it actually happens, nobody's getting anything.
Point is, Bernie doesn't care about deficit spending. Of course, most of our politicians don't. It's just called, hey, just give everything and just keep printing money and don't worry about it. And that's
Listen, we live in a country where truly no one should be hungry.
no.
We have an abundance.
Yep.
Farmers turn crops under.
Yep.
All right. So if they can't find a way to get things to the people, then there's a problem there. So, listen, even in the Bible, and I'm not trying to go back to it, but I am, it says, to the farmer, leave the outer part of your field ungleaned for the widow and orphan. It didn't say, hey, the outer part of your field, I want you to glean it, take it to the miller, turn it into flour, take the flour to the baker and turn it into bread and give it to the people. He said, here it is, it's work fair.
Let them come get
it's
it.
work
Yeah.
fair.
Did I tell you when my wife went gleaning?
Gleaning.
She went gleaning. We talked about this on the radio, have we not? Or
I
no?
don't-
You know the word glean, right?
Yes.
Do you know what it means?
Sure.
Okay, good. So I'm living up in northern Michigan, and my wife says, hey, I'm going gleaning today. And I said, yeah, you should clean more often. She goes, no, gleaning. I said, gleaning? That's an old biblical term. She goes, yeah. And I said, what are you doing? She goes, well, the neighbor ladies say they have these big green bean fields, and they have these commercial pickers. They're machines
Right,
that
and they
come
miss
and
stuff.
pick it. And once in a while, they run over a piece of a row. And I said, okay, good. Well, let me know. She comes home with 100 pounds of green beans.
Did she?
She gets to help her.
Did she can them?
Wait a minute. This gets better. So here we're looking. I've never canned. She's never canned. But her mother had. So we call her
Bring the
mom.
expert in.
Better. It gets worse. So we call her mom. She goes, yeah, I've got jars
Okay.
and lids.
I was going to say, if you had to go to the store and get the jars and the
Wait a
lids, those are
minute, wait,
expensive beans.
Mom lives 250 miles away.
Oh,
So we had to drive down. Of course,
It's
you
an
can't
adventure,
just
Joe.
go
It's
and
an
grab the
adventure.
jars and leave. You got to stay,
Mm-hmm.
and.
Of course.
So anyway, they turned out to
A
be
month later,
the best green beans ever, and
yeah.
she put up I don't know how many quarts, at least 50, and we had
Yeah.
we had a lot of green beans.
did
Yeah,
you
I
ever
grew
do
up
it
with-
again?
No. 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 Hey, you go to Winn-Dixie and you buy a can of green beans.
no, they're not as
Right.
good.
They're not as good.
No,
I
they're
know,
not
but
as
guess
good.
what?
My grandmother used to can green beans. Every year.
American people did not waste.
Yeah.
Listen, even here in the citrus areas here in our area, big crews go through and they pick all the oranges.
Yeah.
But some of them are green, so they don't pick them. And then they pay to have it spot picked, which means they go in and they just take the last bit out there because we don't want to waste.
Right.
But what you don't want is to go through all that labor and it go to waste. So, culling and spot picking and all those things, those are great things.
It's back in, if you were old country, it's like when they killed a cow, they ate that cow. They didn't
Nothing
waste.
went to waste.
Nothing went to waste. You've had Rocky Mountain oysters, right, girl?
No.
You looked very excited about that.
No.
Yeah, she turned up her
I ain't going
there right away.
Nope. Thank you.
We had my dad was a milkman in Detroit, and he delivered milk to stores and restaurants and all these different ethnic ones. And he was raised old country, like pretty much, your dad was the same. So tripe and sweetbreads, they give you names for stuff that
Make it sound better than it really
and
is.
it sure wasn't. But a lot of those things he had when he was a kid, and he forgot how disgusting they were.
Oh, let me tell you what. One of my dad's favorite things was a terrible concoction called head cheese.
Oh,
Head
yeah.
cheese. Oh,
All right.
Lord.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
Nancy Ann would have to go to the deli and buy it, and she made sure that everybody knew it is not for me. It's not for me. But he loved it,
Yeah.
and he ate it.
My dad would take chicken fat and spread that on pumpernickel bread
That's good.
instead of butter. Or,
Hey.
and then, now I wasn't big on the chicken fat, but I love sour cream on pumpernickel bread to this day. And I don't do it very often
That's
because
old school.
I'm trying to stay away from the bread, but the sour cream sits there all by itself. And
Well, if
gets
it's
lonely.
pumpernickel, that's not that bad a
Oh,
bread.
yeah, it's good. Anyway, it's just the old country folks, they wasted nothing whenever
Well,
it came.
because things came too hard, Joe.
That's exactly.
And you eat what you've got.
Things come easier today. We live in a land of abundance.
And you got to feel like we look at kids today and we look at what they're learning and the way it's happened. It's not their fault. It's the parents' fault that the kids are not given the same type of education. Like,
Yeah, I think you send them to public school and they come home with all kinds of ideas.
well, and that's true too. Now, when you went to Catholic school, you weren't allowed to have
No,
ideas.
no. Just do what you're told.
You just do
Yeah.
it. Hey, when I went to this all-boys Jesuit prep school, there was no such thing as a kid that had any D's, meaning ADD, ADH, nothing.
Or
There was-
D's on the
It
report
wasn't
card
just
either.
where you went to school. I truly do not. I'm not saying they were not out there. I just don't remember anybody having those problems.
But they created these problems in order to keep them coming back to the psychologist and the
Well, how about tubes in their ears?
know.
Did you ever remember anybody getting tubes in their ears?
yes. It was the ailment du jour.
I don't remember
ailment
that.
du jour, isn't
Yes,
that the same?
ailment du jour.
Getting tonsils out was the ailment
I,
du jour.
Mine are
I
gone.
remember that.
Yeah.
I remember the tonsils, but I didn't have mine out until I was 40. I held on
I
to
never
those
had.
bad boys.
I had mine out as a
16.
baby or a little kid.
Yeah, mine had to come out 16.
I held on to mine as long as
I was
could.
always sick though with a sore throat. Always.
I asked the doctor, I go, hey, can I go fishing? He goes, you'll be home in bed for 2 weeks. I go, but if I feel up to it, can I go fishing? He goes, you can do whatever you want. But I was home in bed for 2 weeks.
Uh-huh.
It was awful.
Well, I had a vasectomy du jour.
We don't want to know your story.
340
Yeah, okay. Now let's get off the medical subject.
340. Hey, old people sit around and talk about. Remember that,
Really?
Ian?
No, old
it is
people
true.
sit
We-
around
when we
and
were
talk
kids,
about
we say,
ailments.
listen to those old people sitting around talking about their ailments. And I look at my buddies and I say, now it's us.
Oh God.
We're comparing
Yeah.
physicians.
But
Yeah, he's
you,
good.
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
you
good.
meet really early at the restaurant or Dunkin' Donuts
right.
really early because you can't sleep.
Listen, what really upsets me is when I go to a restaurant and I'm there too early for early bird.
That's called lunch, Joe. It's called lunch.
Did I tell you in Montana, they got the local, I call it the Redneck Bar, which is my favorite bar out there. And I went there for happy hour and I ordered a scotch and water. Guess how much it cost?
$5.
$2.
Oh, my.
I have never
That was
seen
the real happy hour.
I have never seen a $2 scotch in my entire life. And I looked at the guy and I said, really? $2? Seriously? He goes,
It's
yeah.
a whole new meaning to happy hour.
That's right.
No, it was well. Of course it was well. How the kind of scotch do you have? It's the cheapest one they've got. It's the
It
well
didn't
scotch.
matter.
Make no
They
difference.
just made it out of the barrel
I said,
yesterday.
what scotch was that? It's McCormick or whatever.
Hey,
They
they're
all-
$2. Have a few. It won't
Have a
matter
few,
after
won't
a
matter.
while.
They all taste the same after
I'm
another.
telling you what. Well, the only problem was I had a date I had to leave. Otherwise, I might still be there.
You should have called her and had her meet you there.
You know, you're starting to use logic.
Do they have Uber out there?
Yeah, they got Uber every
Have her
place.
picked
They
up.
send a horse.
They also have cabs and all else. Yeah, I have a horse. No, they have a moose.
A moose. That's right. That's right.
340-1590, 340-1590.
Wow, so from Montana to Mexico, you're the world
He's the
traveler
world
these days.
traveler.
I'm telling you what.
You and
it was
Alan.
Mexico, not the times I've been to Mexico, 2 or 3. After the third time, I said, I don't ever need to go back and do
I've
this.
been to too many touristy areas in Mexico.
Well, you have to be,
That
otherwise
seems to where we go.
it's not
That's-
safe.
But
You know what we did one time, which was interesting? We went to the real touristy area by the beach, and we rode the city bus.
Oh, nice.
And we rode it all the way in, and as you're passing the condos, all the people are getting on, and the bus driver will be looking at you, and eventually you get to where the people come on with chickens and animals and stuff. And
Chicans.
And you
Oh,
drive
yeah, big time.
all the way there. And believe me, you will see the part of Mexico you did not come to see.
I rode the city bus one time in San Antonio. Felt like I was in
There
Mexico.
you go. So you know what I'm talking about.
Well, I will tell you, you kind of, I did the same thing. I forget where it was, but it went way out of town. My wife goes into the bathroom. She comes out. She says, I can't go there. And I said, why? They don't have a toilet. And I said, well, what do
There's
they
a
have?
hole in the
There's a
ground.
hole in the
That's
floor.
exactly what it
Hole in the
is.
floor. And
We're
I-
having a little problem
And I
here.
said, you got to stand over the top of it. She goes, And I said, well, thank goodness. What are we going to do? She goes, I don't care.
Hold it.
But I can't go. I'm going to hold it, right?
Well, that's the way it is.
That's just the way it is. And I said, well,
Yeah.
okay. You know,
There's
doesn't-
no
us-
gold
us-
thrown
Spoiled
there.
American.
Yes, spoiled American.
Us guys could care less where we go.
Find a bush.
We don't even care if it's a bush, a tree, or who knows what. 340-1590, 340-1590. Well, winding.
No sense in asking people to call, Joe.
too late
Too
now.
late now.
Mike didn't call us today. Bulldog's not feeling good. I need to call him and
Check on him.
He's got something going on. But hey, what happens is, you know, I was talking to another couple buddies of mine yesterday, and I says, you know, this is really getting disgusting reading the obits. And I said, why? I said, more than half the people are younger than me. This is not a pretty picture.
Well, now, I take a different position. I have a lot of friends, and you I'm sure have the same thing, who didn't have the privilege to get old. So
Yeah,
I
there's a-
look,
Yeah.
I look
Yeah.
at it. You know what? I'm going to get as old as I can.
There are also some people who have bad gene pools.
Well, yes, absolutely.
It just seems like everybody.
My father ended up being the last of his generation. There was
There you
like
go.
nobody. Everybody had passed
Now,
before
how old
him.
was he when he died?
82.
Yeah. See,
Yeah.
now Mom was 82, which was today really is not
Not
considered
considered
old.
ancient, but old.
Hey, when I was 16, if you were 30, you were.
But when you're
ancient.
the last one of your family,
That's
you're
right.
like,
You're the
That's
last
right.
one,
That's
yeah.
right. That's
I
kinda-
hate,
kinda
as I
hard.
said to my daughter's father-in-law, I says, you stay alive because as long as you are, you're at the top of the pecking order. I'm not. And until next week, thank you so
Bye,
much.
folks.
You've been listening to the Team Martek Hour. The Team Martek Hour is a paid program. The content was provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership were not responsible for its content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. Tune in again next Wednesday at 11:05 for the Team Martek Hour here on WPSL 1590.
This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.